Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. My name's Sam Milsom. I'm a Programme Manager at Open Data Manchester. We're an independent not-for-profit based in Manchester in the north of England, although we do work nationally and internationally as well. We're actually formed by a diverse group of open data and open source advocates way back in 2010. And essentially we help people, organizations, local government, charities, communities to use data ethically and responsibly. I guess we believe that effective use of data, and particularly open data, can help to solve some of our biggest challenges. So whether that's helping people find the services they need, to catching a bus, all the way up to saving the planet. And what we sort of believe is that by demystifying data, by demystifying its use, and supporting people who want to use it wisely, we can actually bring about a fairer society, where everyone benefits from better decision-making, better products, better services, you name it. So what do? I'm just going to very, very quickly run through of what we do as an organisation, but then I'm going to focus down onto a programme of work that I run, which is the Data for Communities work. So a lot of the work we do is we do quite a lot of consultancy. We work with organisations in the public and private sector, or with local authorities, whether it's helping develop open data strategies, or we worked with the GMCA recently to help prioritise some of the actions that came out of their information strategy. We have a strong user research focus, so we work across academia, creating user research reports. One we did recently was with NERC, the Digital Solutions Hub, so loads and loads of environmental data. They wanted to bring it actually into an open data portal, so we worked with the potential users of that to find out what they need and what they would want. More recently, I've been working with Manchester City Council to understand the motivations and needs of their volunteers, people who actually help people get online, so their digital inclusion programme, but also importantly talking to the users of those services, so the people who need support getting online, and actually talking to them about their lived experience and looking at how does the council measure that versus what is the actual reality, and how they can use that both quantitative and qualitative information together to create better services. We do design and deliver a lot of our own projects, such as the Declaration for Responsible and Intelligent Data Practice. We have developed open data standards for the packaging industry, and Data for Communities is one of those projects. So we are a CIC, so any work we do goes back into our sort of community work. But we do a lot of we advocate widely for how data and digital technologies can help to build more resilient communities through giving people insight, and also hopefully giving them a stake in the governing process. And we do a lot of engagement, as I've sort of already mentioned. We do a lot of engagement with people, with talking to communities, making sure that the citizens or the people who are going to be affected by data and digital systems are informed, that they are included, particularly to help them partake in conversations and decisions that are ultimately about them, where they live, their communities. And we are a community ourselves too. We're a community of practitioners, so we run loads of events. We have people from academic, public, private sector, charities, just interested people, curious people, and we get together regularly and we run events and we share information, we share practices, we talk to each other, so we kind of understand what's going on. So there's a sort of wide, sort of diverse, area of practice and experience that goes on. But I think the main thread that links all of our work is this, really, is about putting people first in anything and everything that we do. It's about rights, it's about ethics, it's about trust, importantly. And this is where Data for Communities comes in. So as we all know, we live in a world that is just awash with data. I think for many people, data can seem very abstract. It remains abstract. with its links to the real world often are still really unclear for most people. And yet it's used to inform policy, to make decisions that are going to affect where we live, often the very streets outside our roads, you know. And for a lot of people that I work with, that we work with, their experience of data is often not necessarily a good one, you know, stories of misuse, but it can also just be, they think of data as being how many minutes they got left on their phone, or how, you know, or they think it reminds them of horrible math lessons in school and they switch off, you know. But I mean, you know, people here today, and I think a lot of us know, we know the good that data can do, especially open data, you know, whether it's optimizing resources, helping predict the weather, tracking the spread of coronavirus. You know, there's a lot out there. It helps to make our world more navigable, understandable. I mean, just look at apps like City Mapper, which are so widespread now, all using open data. But we also know that there is a growing problem. The surveillance, the growing in surveillance. There's issues with, you know, flaws in universal credit, the school qualifications scandal, use of algorithms being not that great. I think what's happening is we're seeing a danger of growing distrust, disaffection from people, the alternative facts and narratives that can potentially cause huge problems. And I think especially with the rise in automated decision-making, in AI, there is a lot of confusion from people. A lot of, unfortunately, not always great policy being made. And I think in its most extreme, it can cause a real lack of trust in our processes, in our democratic processes, you know, where voter turnout is already low, and people just don't believe the results anyway. So here's a little more down-to-earth example, you know, that I think a lot of people don't think about, is that, you know, there's a growing awareness of how much we are surveilled. I think something as even innocuous as our smart meters in our homes can be something really useful to us. They can help us to track our routines, where's our energy going, what time of day, help us to save energy, help us to be more, you know, efficient, save money, whatever it is. But I think a lot of people wouldn't know how to access this information, regardless what the energy companies give them or tell them. It's still that language of data, the language, you know, even looking at graphs is something that is still quite exclusive for a lot of people. And instead, something as useful as a smart meter ends up just becoming something that is essentially hoovering up your private data. You know, energy companies are taking this information away. I'm not saying they're doing anything nefarious with it, but I'm saying a lot of people are giving away a lot of stuff about their information, their data, their daily lives, with no return. So one way that we try to help this is a program that we've developed and run in Greater Manchester for a long time. We have done it nationally as well, but is our Data for Communities program. And it's essentially it's a spreadsheetless introduction to data and the world of data. It takes the form of workshops, it takes the form of anything really. We go and talk to people, find out what it is that they're interested in. But it is an introduction to data and open data. We show people open data sets, how to access them, usually, you know, open data portals that are readily available to use. We raise awareness of the dangers of data, the biases inherent in them, what to look out for. Not a spreadsheet in sight, and people really, really like that one. We always take them through stuff that you could access right now on your smartphones if you wanted to. And a big part of it is actually having people, communities, actively participate in the collection of data themselves. There's something really powerful about that performative aspect of collecting your own data that suddenly makes it very real. It's no longer just numbers, ones and zeros in a spreadsheet or something over there that someone else does. It's something that they have actively participated in, that they feel they are representing in. And the people who attend these workshops, they were originally designed for local councillors. Amazing the amount of local councillors who don't understand data. And I have some stories about that as well. But we have charity workers, activists, and a lot of just local residents who are curious and want to know more about where they live. So we used to tour it around in town halls, local libraries, wherever people wanted to do it. Do a lot of it online as well as a result of after the lockdowns and so on. And I'm just going to give you a brief overview of some of the stuff that we go through. And this is not extensive, and there's a lot we do and don't do. But you know, we take them through the basics of what data is. Many of you might be familiar with this. We try to, too often I find people think that data is just the answer, you know, that they have a question and they can find some data and it's going to answer it and they think they've solved it. We try to show them, no, actually data is not the answer, but it can be the evidence, you know, that you can use on your journey to appropriate action. But it is, data in and of itself is often, it's not the answer, but it can help you to, you know, inform, gain deeper understanding and help them do the right thing. Actually find one of the first things I have to do is take people through a bit of geographical sort of statistics, because particularly here in the UK, when exploring data about us, where we live, it is really important to understand how data is broken down geographically. And what we find is that a lot of people don't understand this. So this is Greater Manchester, the boundaries of Greater Manchester, and this is the 10 boroughs of Greater Manchester. So you've got Rochdale, Manchester, Oldham, Bolton, Salford, Tameside, Bury, Stockport, Trafford, Wigan. All of them, you know, you have the, and then you have the GMCA sitting on top of that. GMCA collects so much data, it's brilliant. It releases so much open data. As a website there, mappinggm.org.uk, it's fantastic. They release so much open data. They do it in their own way, fantastic. But all of the 10 boroughs of Greater Manchester also collect loads of information, loads of data, and they release it all in their own way. Obviously, there is a lot of collaboration. They do talk to each other, but you know, that's just another place, another source of finding it. Oh, didn't like that. So I've zoomed in a little bit on Manchester because then there's often the parliamentary constituency boundaries. So quite often I talk to people and they think that your MPs represent a certain area, but they don't exactly fit. You know, there's still the kind of the different lines. So there's already a level kind of confusion there. And even smaller, well, then we have the ward boundaries. So you can see how things are broken down even further. Many of you here, you might already be familiar with this already, but it shows you how confusing things can start to get. You know, we do even have to talk to some people about MPs being different from local councillors and wards. You know, who are the right people to talk to? Does anybody know what this one is? Anyone hazard a guess? What this level of broken down? These are LSOAs, or lower super output areas. So it gets broken down even more. A lot of local data about where, you know, it is found in LSOA format. They're roughly, they're not really done geographically, they're sort of done by the amount of population. So it's about not exactly 1,500 people, give or take. Really, really useful for town planning, providing utilities, water, waste, that sort of thing. Some of Manchester's skyscrapers that are going up at the moment, and there's a lot of them, are entire LSOAs in their own right, which has been causing some real problems with the 2021 census, which is already massively out of date for Manchester. So, you know, the Manchester have had to go and talk to the ONS and show them that they need to rethink this. But yeah, and so I like to, we find it really, really important to explain to people how all of this stuff works. You wouldn't think about this as being related to data, these geographical boundaries, but as I say, often a lot of data is mapped onto these things. This is the indices of deprivation. This is 2015, so this is a little bit out of date. But you know, it goes. We suddenly are able to take that numbers in a spreadsheet, put them visually, and it suddenly means something to people. They can start to look at it. But we know it's not perfect. We really think that that higher level of deprivation to that lower level of deprivation there, across that one boundary, across that one street, it's a different story. It's not. We know that neighbourhoods aren't built that way in real life. Society isn't really built that way. And it's getting communities to understand that often the data you're going to be looking at and the data you're going to be using and the data that our policymakers are going to be using to make these decisions, they will often use this data, but it's also understand that that's not how neighbourhoods work. That's not how people work, you know. So some of the stuff that we like to go through with them. So a lot of the stuff is about looking at biases. It is also about looking at the dangers. This is from a website, tylervigan.com. I've nicked this. These are really good. This shows at how, correlation does not always equal causation. So in this one, he's mapped maths doctorates and uranium at US nuclear power plants, and you can kind of see a light correlation there. When I look at that, I think, yeah, that makes sense. Maths doctorates, PhD, I don't know, people working at power plants, that kind of makes sense to me, right? Per capita cheese consumption versus number of people who die by becoming tangled in their bed sheets, okay? Correlation there. A number of people who drowned by falling into a pool correlates with films Nicolas Cage has appeared in. So again, I think a lot of people I work with, that they find these very funny. They really, really enjoy these because it is that sort of, even, we are quite quick to make snap decisions on something, particularly with data. Joking apart, though, this is a very real-world story, and this, some of you might know this story. This is the bleeding of Chicago. It's a City Lab article. So this is a story that they explored about police throughout the 90s. Chicago was known as like the murder capital of America. Really, really high levels of people being killed by gunshot wounds. And the police and the mayor's office got together and they instigated loads of really, controversial policies, so racial profiling, stop and searching, all of that kind of thing. And they were able to show, using data, that over time, over 20 years, the number of people being killed went down, right? What a great story. Brilliant. Our policies work. We can continue funneling money into those things that we do. But then this other data set came out that actually showed roughly the same amount of people were being shot. It's just that more people were surviving. And it turns out that the A&E teams had just gotten really, really good at saving people because they had to over those sort of 20 years. So, we use this to sort of highlight that just because the data is telling you one thing, seems to be telling you one thing, that might not be the story, and you might not get the answer that you want. So it's really important to question these things and to question the data that people are sort of showing you. So, once we've kind of gone through all the sort of slightly depressing stuff, we kind of get onto the bit more interesting stuff. We just do some really practical stuff with them and take people through open data sets, in the UK at least. Actually, I do know globally, but we take them through sort of UK-based sites. We have some really, really great openly accessible data sets online. As I mentioned earlier, you can go on these on your phone now and explore them. It's brilliant. Police.uk, it's the idea with this, you can pop in your postcode and look up all the reported crimes in your area. Right? And again, with caveats, it is just reported crimes. It's not all of them. I had a local councillor sort of say that people are always complaining to him about the car thefts and the bike thefts in his area, but actually, when he looked at it, they were really, really low. And I was like, well, why do you think that is? And he thinks that, well, people aren't reporting them anymore, but they've given up reporting them. So he was able to go away and say, well, I need to tell them to report it regardless, because if you're not reporting it, then the police don't know, the police are only going to go where the things reported to are, particularly if we start thinking about AI, automated decision makings. It's really, really important. It was really important for that councillor to be able to go back and, and tell his constituents that. And also, actually, quite a funny one. If anyone knows Manchester and knows the famous Piccadilly Gardens, apparently there's never been any crime in Piccadilly Gardens, but that's because it's postcoded. Piccadilly Gardens does have its own postcode. We take people through the NOMIS web. So this is Office of National Statistics. Again, this slide might be slightly out of date, actually, but essentially you can just look up information about your ward. So, you know, population, employment levels, all of that sort of information from the census and things like that. And it's really, really useful. And this is the one that people really, really enjoy exploring. You can compare wards, apparently. So you can compare your ward to the one next to it and see how you're doing. I'm not sure if that's a level of competition we should be looking at. GrantNav is a really good one from 360 Giving. It's the UK's sort of funding, charitable funding open data. It's not all charitable, it's an open data standard. Many, many charities do subscribe to it. And it's kind of like the Google of charity data. You can just type in anything, really, and it will search it all for you. It's great. We've had people from sort of local charities come and look at this and suddenly realise that, you know, there's this funder they've never heard of who actually has funded something similar in a nearby town. And great, they come away from these sessions, suddenly they've got 5, 6, 7, 8 potential new funders that they can approach that they didn't know of before because they didn't know that this existed. It does exist, it's out there, it's great. And lastly, I'll just quickly show you this Mapping GM one. This is the one I mentioned earlier. This is released by the Greater Manchester Combined Authority. It houses much of Greater Manchester's open data, and all in one place. You can add your boundaries on there. You can think, I want to have a look at flooding levels, but maybe at the same time you want to have a look at transport, and it just maps it all for you, all on that. And it's a really great resource. So, just keep my eye on the time. For various communities, you know, it's not just about people sat in workshops, and it's not just about getting people to understand what data is and exploring data about them. It is also about them, you know, getting that kind of human connection to it. So various projects that we've done in Manchester, there was an Our Streets Chorlton and Right to the Streets, which was in South Manchester and Trafford. We did lots of stuff around community mapping. So we trained kind of local data gatherers, if you like. We engaged the wider community by conducting sort of walkabouts and things like that. So exploring maps, exploring things that are important to them and going out and mapping it and actually doing it themselves, as I mentioned earlier. Sometimes these can be quite fun. We sort of do expedition style things. So, you know, trying to make data a bit more interesting to people, a bit more relatable. And sometimes it can be quite serious things like doing traffic counts and measuring traffic on their street, as I mentioned earlier. This graph is actually from, what this graph actually shows is a number of side roads near Manchester United football ground. And we're able to show how, that's pre-kickoff, and the second bump is post-kickoff, you know, and we're able to sort of show people how it affected. And interestingly, some local residents who felt their roads got really, really busy were actually able to realise their roads didn't get that busy at all. The problem was to do with the speed at which people were travelling down there. And they were able to know that, one, by looking at this data and comparing it themselves, but also by being out on the street, measuring that data. They had that more experiential element of, that was really, really fast. Congestion wasn't the issue, it was the speed. That allowed them to be able to go to their local councillors, to be able to go to the consultations and actually, you know, be able to speak to them with the actual problem in hand. You know, before I think they were saying it's really busy and the council come back saying it's not. Unfortunately, the council were right in that element, you know, but they were able to go there with absolutely the right issues. All the way down to other issues as well. I mean, you know, this programme, this was a project we did in Stockport back in 2018 now, where, you know, we went out with people with visual and mobility impairments, and they mapped the routes they took into and out of Stockport town centre in order to sort of help the local council understand what routes are good for them, what routes they don't take, why not, what can they do to make it more accessible for all. And if anyone's been to Stockport recently in the last couple of years, there's been so much development going on, and it seems to be a much more accessible town, which is just really good to see. And I mean, even a recent project we did was in Right to the Streets, which was a Home Office funded project we did in Trafford with a multitude of partners. This is my colleague Toyabat with the snazzy orange backpack on. She went out and walked with women and girls, talking about, again, the routes that they took, the routes that they don't like, what makes them feel safe, what makes them feel unsafe, and mapping those things. And actually developed a place review, like a place audit, that was designed by the people of Trafford for the people of Trafford. So these have been distributed in local community centres, as social clubs, that kind of thing. So people can kind of audit where they live and take that to their council, take it to their councillors and say, this is what we want, this is how we feel. So, I think, as I say, the sort of thread of all of this is going out and talking to people, helping them to be sort of better represented in their communities. So just to sort of summarise, really, why do we do this? Well, I think it's on there, really. We think that we want to try and teach useful data skills, especially for people who don't consider themselves data people, but are yet going to be affected by data. We hope it makes data feel more accessible to people, and hopefully it's a little bit more fun than just sitting down and looking at spreadsheets for them. But I think really importantly, I do think it helps people, empowers people to have an informed voice. I think that it gives them a lot of confidence and participation, and I think it does help give them an active community role. But especially, with a lot of the conversations today around AI, automated decision-making, where these technologies are moving faster than legislation will allow, using faster than we can often understand, it's that sort of, this type of data literacy is more important than ever. So yeah, that's why we do it, really. We want to try and give communities themselves the tools to use open data for social good. After all, it belongs to them, it is about them, it's going to affect their very lives. So we do everything we can just to sort of help people along that way. So yeah, thank you. That's my. We do Open Data Manchester. As I say, we do quite a lot of things. There's our website there, and we also have a monthly newsletter. I'll be around if anyone wants to. A lot of the materials, I should just mention, a lot of the materials that we have for these things, if you want to know more, if you want to borrow them, use them, everything we do is in the open. So just come and grab me, and I'll be very happy to have a conversation. Yeah.